You are recording.
All right, here we are on The Blind Man in Black. And I can't tell you how unbelievably happy I am to have director of theater, film, and television, screenwriter, Professor Craig Belknap here. And I should also mention you are a dear friend whom I've always thought of as a father throughout my entire life. And I want to express that and show you my appreciation. And we'll talk more about that later. But let's kind of just begin. How are you holding together through all this shit?
Well, okay. I mean, I just thank God. And every day I thank God that Trump was not reelected. We were going down a sliding slope there, and I just, I was actually ready to leave the country and go to Italy, where my husband is from, and literally go to Bologna and live.
That's not a bad idea, regardless of the political situation.
But no, I'm fine. I'm very, very thankful that this country, or at least 80 million people, woke up. How 74 million could have voted for him is beyond belief.
Yeah, it's a little insane, and to say the least. But he's not out yet.
No, he isn't.
So we have to see if he's willing to let go.
I doubt it.
So, but how are you doing with the COVID shit? Are you feeling isolated? Are you able to adapt, or is it how are you feeling about that?
Well, it's okay. I'm very safe. I wear a mask. I socially distanced. I'm doing teaching online through Zoom. I have a partner and a dog, and I thank the Lord for both, because I get to walk the dog, which gets me out of the house. I have a big garden where I spend a lot of my time.
And it's beautiful. I remember it very well. It's a sanctuary.
It is. But I brought something I want to read to you. Dear Craig,
is it the Bible?
No, not the Bible. No,
okay.
It's too long. Dear Craig, I just wanted to thank you for your immense support and encouragement over the years. I have never felt that I've properly shown you my deepest gratitude for all the wonderful things you've done for me. Inside this bag is a small token of my profound appreciation for your timeless kindness. With great respect, Brian Max Snyder. And so I opened the box, and this book, which I have treasured ever since and always will, is a signed copy of Jean Genet's The Balcony. And I'm tearing up now, because just thinking about when I got it, I was so blown away. Thank you.
It's the least I can do. I mean, I should say that, and thank you for sharing that. I deeply appreciate it. When I was attending CalArts, I can't begin to express what you did for me on so many levels. Just in terms of friendship, you are always there. You're always present. You're always kind, compassionate, thoughtful. As a director, I really admired your process. And I should mention this because it's really one of the formative things of when I began acting. I found an appreciation for the rehearsal process itself through working with you. And I realized through working with you that I loved rehearsing even more than the performance itself, just because of that experience with you and Lou. Lou is also a father as well, and Lou Palter, of course. And it was, you did so much for me in so many ways that I've carried this throughout my entire life. And I think of you often, and our rehearsals together, the time we just had conversations. And that book was I just wanted you to know how much you meant to me. And so thank you for sharing that. Did you ever direct The Balcony, by the way?
Never The Balcony. I've done The Maids.
Right. With Matt and I.
Well, at school too, but also a production in New York, actually, years and years ago.
Right.
With all men playing the three women.
Yeah, I remember. Everybody remembers when at the end, when I bent Matt over the bed to kiss him, Matt Dittman, who's a dear friend as well. Everybody could see his large penis as I bent him over, and they always mention that every time. Anyway, let's go back a little bit. Let's start talking. How did your life begin? What was it like?
Well, I was born and brought up in a little town outside of New York City called Valhalla, New York. And Valhalla, New York is mostly cemeteries, hence the name Valhalla.
Right.
My parents, my mom was a nun who leapt over the wall and married my father. So that's kind of part of the background. And my parents had programmed me, because I had an uncle who was a very famous surgeon, to be a doctor. And so I actually I was at 17 in the hospital operating rooms holding instruments for my uncle. And their dream was Johns Hopkins University Medical School.
Which you probably easily could have done.
Yes, actually I got in. Mm-hmm. But while I was an undergrad at University of Pennsylvania, I got bitten by the theater bug and knew right away that it's something I had to do. I directed a play there, and I applied to medical schools and I applied to theater schools, and got into Johns Hopkins Medical School, got into Carnegie, got into Yale, and decided on Carnegie, which is kind of a great story. I toured a group of guys, a play I directed called Asleep of Prisoners, and we were on tour in Washington, D.C. This was out of the University of Pennsylvania. I mean, we were students there, but we went on this tour. And after the production was over, a man came up to me and said, my name is Earl Gister, and I'm the head of directing at, or the head of the chairman of the theater school at Carnegie Mellon, and I want to invite you to come. And I was so blown away by the fact that somebody would travel to see somebody's work that I just immediately knew that's where I wanted to go. So I went to Carnegie, where I met my still mentor, Lou Palter, who was, it was an incredible faculty, he being primary. I didn't know him very well at school. He didn't love my work. He didn't love my acting at all. But I had,
and I'm sure he didn't hide that in any way.
Not in no way.
Yeah.
You know, but years later, when I moved to California from New York, we reconnected and then started team teaching at Cal Arts. And now he's still at 93 teaches with me in my workshops here in LA. So he's my father, my lover, my brother, my uncle, my everything.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, you, I mean, everybody, when I have conversations with friends from Cal Arts, that's you and Lou are the primary focus of the conversation. You made the theater school for us. I mean, you made it a family for us, a place that we felt safe and protected and loved. And it was because of both of you.
Yeah, I mean, we love what we do, you know, and I love teaching. What I do now isn't so much teaching as it is coaching. And there's a big difference in my head. Coaching means people know what they're doing. I'm there to see if I can make it any better. Anyway, I ended up, my father didn't speak to me for 2 years when I went to Carnegie. And it wasn't until I got my first New York Times review when out of the blue, it was a very good review. And he called me up and he said, maybe I've made a mistake. And I burst into tears. My father was a Welshman and would never admit a mistake, ever, ever. So that coming from him was one of the biggest days of my life.
So what happened originally, though, when you said, I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm going to the theater? What did he say?
I walked into the dining room at our house in Valhalla, and I told him what I was going to do. And he simply lifted his hand and directed me to exit the dining room.
Oh, wow.
And that was really, and my umbilical cord was to my father, not to my mom. I worshiped my dad. So it was devastating. But I just felt I had to do it, that I could have gone to Johns Hopkins. I think I would have been a bad doctor, and I would have always missed out on what I really loved, which was acting and directing. So I went off to Carnegie. Vietnam was raging. One of the ways you could stay out of the war was to teach on the college or university level. So immediately after I got out, so I could not go to Vietnam and shoot people, I got a job at the University of Washington teaching. And I'm 79 years old now, over all of those years, I've always taught at various places. At the same time, I've had a fairly good professional career outside of the teaching and managed to do both.
So what was the first moment like that you were introduced to theater and you were like, I want more of this? What was it?
In junior high school, my biology teacher, Betty Frame, and she had a big frame. I mean, this was a large woman, 300 pounds of Betty Frame.
And her name was Frame.
Betty Frame. And she was big in the Valhalla Community Theater, and she cast me as a brat in a play called Random Target. And I got a good review, and that was it. There was no turning back. And I don't know, I wanted to be an actor. And when I discovered that I was always kind of looking outside the painting, at the painting, rather than being inside the painting, which an actor has to do, that I thought, oh, maybe I'm not an actor. Maybe I should be a director. And you said something about being in rehearsal. When I'm in rehearsal, I'm the happiest. I'm the happiest person on earth. I'm like a kid in a toy shop. I
believe it. I remember you seemed so full of joy, and it was so beautiful to watch. Just the joy that you exhibited just from being in that space and working with us. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it's a little Eden, little Garden of Eden. I just directed a one-man play, which if the theaters ever reopen in New York, it'll go. It's all set to go to La Mama in New York. And working with a single actor who also wrote it. It's a one-man play. And we worked on it for 2 years. And I was in joy every day. I couldn't wait to go back to rehearsal. So anyway, I'm trying to think, I went to Carnegie. I started teaching University of Washington, Hunter College in New York. And then I was on an extraordinary faculty at Hunter College. Lillian Hellman was there. And Harold Clurman and these really giants, Joseph Anthony. And I directed a production of The Hostage by Brendan being a student production. I mean,
Mm.
you know, and they called me into their office, and I thought, what is this about? And I remember Harold turning to me and said, Craig, you got to get out of here. And he said, we think you're really talented and you're going to die at Hunter College. You've got to leave here. And we know you're going to get tenured at the end of this semester.
Mm-hmm.
Don't accept it. Quit.
Wow.
And
how did you feel about that?
I'm scared to death.
Yeah.
And oh no, I can't. How could I do? But then I turn around and it's coming from those three people.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I quit. I quit at the end of the semester, and with hardly any money at all. I mean, really no money. I found a funeral parlor on West 43rd between 9th and 10th in Manhattan, and with some friends converted it into a theater. And literally it was a funeral parlor. I mean, we were cleaning and bombing equipment and taking rats out and removing coffins and
so all the equipment was still there.
All the equipment was there, right there.
Oh, wow.
And it was, it kind of, we opened the theater, and I had a string, I had a lot of luck. I read a play by, I read two plays, new plays that had never been done. And one was by Christopher Durang, and one was by Albert Inurado. And I learned that they were both graduate students at Yale, getting their MFA in writing. Well, I took a train to Yale and met with them and convinced them to become playwrights in residence at my theater, because I thought, I mean, I've never read anything like these plays. They're astoundingly scary. I could see the audience leaving in droves, but of course, I had to do them. And of course, both of those guys put my theater on the map right away.
Yeah.
New York Times reviews, and two plays moved immediately to off-Broadway. And, it was the best decision I ever made.
So who were some of your influences, in terms of directing?
Well, certainly Harold Clurman, who, after leaving Hunter, came to see everything I did and came a week early and gave me notes. And his notes were just outstanding. I mean, they were things I never would have seen if he hadn't been there. And Lillian Hellman had a big influence on me. In terms of writing, she was the most intelligent human being I've ever met. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think she knew 8 languages, and, she was a wonderful playwright, but over and above that, she was an incredible woman. Mm-hmm. And my influences, it's interesting. Harold Clurman, for sure. I don't think I didn't have very many people that I was really looking up to so much, as I was just struggling to get my own work better. Mm-hmm. And I would see something and be, Peter Brook and people like that just blew me away. I mean, how does, but for the most part, it was just trying to experiment all the time and find out how I could make it better. I think my time at CalArts, where I was for 20 years, that's when I really became a good director, because I was in the classroom every day. And being in the classroom every day, that my own directing teaching instrument was always honed. So I owe a lot to that, to CalArts.
But you started off some A-list careers, though, like Sigourney Weaver and who else? I'm trying to think.
Howard Millman and Alan Menken, who wrote Little Shop of Horrors, and Alan went on to write, all those Disney movies. There was a group of people at Direct Theater that it's astounding to think of. Kathy Bates, Al Pacino for a while, Callista Flockhart, Nick Kazan, Kazan's son, Sam Shepard. So it was nobody knew. Everybody was not very famous back then. Do you know what I mean? Everybody was kind of starting out and kind of sticking their toe in the water and seeing if it was cool or warm.
Right.
But it was exciting. It was very, very exciting.
Was there somebody that you're like, this person is going to make it? Was there somebody that you were like, without a doubt? And then was there somebody that surprised you as well?
You mean acting wise?
Yeah.
I always thought, well, Kathy Bates, I mean, come on. I mean, Kathy Bates, you don't even know, if you're working with her, you're not sure whether she's doing a line from the play or talking to you.
Yeah.
Actor to director, she's so real that it's terrifying. Probably the best actor I've ever worked with. I did a workshop with Pacino, and that was a really interesting experience.
Was that Richard III?
No, it was before Richard III. It was a play that I did that he got involved with and wanted to do the movie of a play called Modigliani about the painter.
Right.
And he was so good that you could not take your eyes off him. I mean, I did a workshop with him and was astounded. And then I don't know what happened. I think I have my own thing about it. I just think he surrounded himself by too many yes people. And I saw his work just not even come close to what it was before. Anyway.
No, I could see that, like The Godfather, the first one, he's very subtle. And
wonderful.
Yeah.
And of course got the Academy Award for, I think, his worst work, which was the Blind Man film. I can't remember the name.
Son of a Woman. Yeah.
Son of a Woman.
Yeah. Hooah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I did that monologue in high school, and there's a lot of swearing in it. And I remember that the teacher was not happy. She was like, "You can't do that." But anyway, yeah. What was there ever a show that you saw or that something that you were like, this is why I'm doing this? Like there's something that you created that surprised you in a way that was unimaginable, that you were just like, this is why I do this. This is, and also in terms of how it impacted the audience and the message that the story was trying to convey. Was there something like, this is the type of work I need to be doing?
Yeah, that's happened like 4 or 5 times. I think the most, it certainly happened with Modigliani, because Modigliani was done in a 99-seat theater, and it's a play about a painter, and it's all down and dirty in Paris in 1916, and it got unbelievable reviews. I mean, I think it got 28 raves. And one night a limousine pulls up, and it's Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel, and Robert De Niro, who had come to see it in this little rinky-dinky theater.
Right.
De Niro came over to me afterward and said, I would like to talk to the cast. And so the 3 of them, I went back to the cast, and they were just like, oh God, it's like, they're here. Anyway, they sat down with the cast for almost an hour and talked about the play with them. And De Niro especially, who kind of led it because his parents were painters, and he was totally into it. I mean, he was just like, And they, after that evening, Pacino bought the rights for the film. And the film unfortunately never got made because he had a falling out with, oh dear, the director. Great director too. Anyway, can't remember. But yeah, I would say Modigliani, certainly. And there's another play. There was a play that I did at the Actors Theater of Louisville called A Piece of My Heart. And it's about women in Vietnam, women who go over as innocent young girls and from America to be nurses and people, army people in Vietnam. And Shirley Laura wrote it. It's really a very good play. And
yeah, I remember there was, I think you did it was the class before me, and it was like Dustin Lancaster was in it.
Yeah, that's probably
Brian
right.
Buckley, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did it. We did it in the Actors Theater of Louisville, which is an incredible experience. It's in the Humanifest of plays, and you're there for 12 weeks because there are 8 plays that are being done all at the same time, and they're going to go up in rep, and they all have different sets, and you're there with 7 other directors, and we worked on it, and it was a very difficult play, and how to render it, and because there's just a kind of a unit set, and the whole thing has to happen in this unit set. Anyway, we put it up, and Shirley and I got very close, and the first preview, about 3/4 of the way through the second act, we heard somebody sobbing. And then more and more people. And at the end, this is like the first preview when it was still shaky too. At the end, the audience stood up and for quite a long time didn't applaud and then burst into applause and bravos and all this. Well, it ran for maybe a month, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And every single night, the same thing happened. You'd hear a sob, and then you'd hear more and more. And then at the end, there was no applause. And then there'd be this ruckus applause. And it got an incredible review. And the New York Times came down to see it. And it moved to New York. And moved to Manhattan Theater Club in New York and died very quickly. And I couldn't understand why.
Was it the same cast and everything?
Same cast, same designer, same everything. And Mel Gusso, who used to be a critic for the New York Times, and I had become friends over his just having seen my work. And I called him up, and he saw it in Louisville, and he did not review it for the Times in New York. Somebody else did. But I said, can I take you to lunch? I want to talk to you about A Piece of My Heart and what the hell happened. And we went to lunch, and he turned to me and he said, I can't figure it out either. I saw it at Manhattan Theater Club, except it's in the wrong theater. The audience-actor relationship is backward from what it was in Louisville. In Louisville, the audience sat above looking down on the actors. And in New York, they sat looking up at the actors. And that perspective altered the play and almost made it pretentious.
Really?
And so, I'm always a sophomore. I'll never be a junior or a senior because, that's when I was 40 years old or 45. I thought I knew what I was doing. Well, just when you think you know, you don't. But that experience in Louisville was the most profound experience I think I personally had with my own work in the theater.
Now, what was the through line of that piece that really, or the spine of it, would you say?
Well, it's about these it's based on diaries of these women that actually were there. And the opening night, the real women came to see it. It was quite extraordinary in New York. The through line is about these individual stories of these women who go to Vietnam, come home, have profound problems, and go through therapy, a group therapy session, and then end up at the Vietnam Wall. And it's an anti-war play, obviously.
Right.
And we had just gone into Iraq. And the echo of that was just, it's like art echoing life or vice versa. It's curious because that's happened 3 times in my life where the circumstances of the world and the plays I'm directing have impacted each other in very, very different ways. A Piece of My Heart, an opera called Jack, which was about Jack Kennedy, which was done by the Schubert Organization. We were trying it out at the University of Oklahoma with a cast from New York. And it's an opera, it's all sung. And a brilliant cast. And on our, I guess it was opening, the day it was to open, there was an explosion in Oklahoma City. It was the Morrow building that blew up. And many people died. And it was a terrible event. I remember the smoke from the bomb went out 5-10 miles. And everybody had their car lights on, kind of going through it. And opening night, which was, I think, that night or maybe 2 nights later. Anyway, the last moment of the play, of the opera, is there's this big ramp, and the person playing Jackie Kennedy comes running down the ramp in black and lifts a black veil and turns and looks at the audience, and the only spoken line in the play is, "The age of violence has begun." And this was immediately after that bomb went off.
Wow. And
the audience gasped because it looked like we had done it because of the bomb. We didn't do it. It was in the play forever, right? Anyway, there was also it's another story like that. I did a play called Princess Grace and the Fazzaris in Chicago, and on its way to New York, starring Dorothy Loudon. It's a very, very, very funny play. It's about the Fazzaris, who are this Italian-American family who are marrying their daughter off, Rosemary, off on the same day that Princess Grace is getting married to Prince Rainier in Monaco, which we see in the play because it's being beamed into their television set. And they're always comparing themselves to Princess Grace and Prince Rainier, and who the hell does she think she is? And it's screamingly funny.
Right.
Again, in previews, one of the IA guys backstage comes over to me and says, "Well, you got good luck. Princess Grace broke her leg today." Well, she did break her leg in a car crash. The next day she was dead. And now what do? You can't do the play. You can't. It's over. So we were even on Nightline, on Ted Koppel's show, talking about it, and we even thought of changing it to somebody else, and that didn't seem to work. It seemed really hokey, and we just closed. And
that must have been disappointing.
Depressing, very depressing. And ironic, because she knew Dorothy very well and was coming to see it in New York. So it was really weird.
So how did you move on from that? That's been really just, I mean, how much time had you spent on that?
A month, 6 weeks. you know, it's so funny because for a very, very long time, you worry, actors and directors both, but directors, I worry about the phone. Will the phone ever ring? Do you know, again?
Yeah.
And I'll get a job or get an interview or something, you know? And I got fired from a play in New York, which was really devastating. I've never been fired before or since, thank God. But it you know, there was it was a big play. It was about Groucho Marx, and it's a long story of how I got fired, but the author and I really didn't get along. The author was Groucho Marx's son.
Oh.
And so it was kind of a setup and kind of strange. But anyway, I got fired, and the next day the union always tells you never quit, don't quit, because we cannot protect you if you quit. So I didn't quit. I just knew it was coming. I could see it, you know, and went down and met with the cast and said, I've been let go, and just hang in there. And you're going to open it. They were going to open in 2 days. So the play opened and ran for 2 years. And of course, it was in the newspaper that I had gotten let go. It was in the New York Times, which is devastating. Yeah. And then the review mentioned me again, which is even worse. But it ran for 2 years. I think it was 2 years. And I got a check every single week, because this is why we have unions. Right. Stage directors and choreographers went to battle for me and said, you know, he was in rehearsal for this play for 6 weeks, and 2 days before, you're going to let him go. Yeah. And so I think I got a check for like $900 every week for 2 years, which back then was a hell of a lot more money than I was making doing anything else. I made more money on Groucho than I made on anything else I ever directed.
So what was the issue though? Where was the disagreement between you and the playwright?
He always wanted to direct it. Producers knew that he couldn't. And the producers knew me, and so they hired me, and I didn't realize he was unhappy until this night when I was called up to the lighting booth, and he said, here, I want you to take care of these 23 notes. And I looked at the notes and I said, it was a long time. And I said, you know, Arthur, I don't think I can do this. His name was Arthur Marx. I can do some of it, but number 10, 11, and 12, I can't do. Because I totally think it has nothing to do with you as the writer. It's got to do with my work, and I won't do it because I don't believe it. So that was the writing on the wall.
I see.
Anyway, it was, it's the rockiest of roads, was that. And then you think the phone will never ring. I called my agent and I said, you won't believe what just happened. You know, and I thought, oh God, is William Morris going to let me go now? You're always that, you know, you're always on tender hooks. I'm worried about work and, you know, will you have another job?
So how long did it take before you started working again after that?
Not terribly long. I think, well, I had an incredible agent, the best agent in New York, the head of directing at William Morris. I mean, he was a guy named Gilbert Parker, and I pursued him like crazy. I knew that if I could get him as my agent, I would never stop working. And I did everything I possibly could to get him to be my agent. I mean, I flew him to Washington to see a play I did at the Folger. And he said yes, and I never stopped working. You know.
So When you were pulled in for work, what do you think the reason was? Like, was there something that, you know, what made them say, I want Craig Belknap?
Well, if it was a new work, it's all up to the chemistry between author and director. I directed a play called Blood Moon in New York that Nick Kazan wrote. That was an extraordinary play, and he's a brilliant writer, the son of Ilya Kazan, and we just hit it off. I went to an interview, we'd never met before, and he asked me to talk about the play, and I think I'm brutally honest. I'm not a good fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I'm scared of this play. The play is about rape, and it's a very scary play. And I'm not quite sure I know yet how to do it, but I'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hitchcock may be the answer. And he kind of sat up, and that was the end. I got the job. I was never that kind of like the A-list director sought after, oh, I've got to have Craig Belknap to do this. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of LORT work, League of Regional Theaters. And the thing is, once you do good work at a theater, you'll get invited back, especially in that world. So, you know, I did Shakespeare festivals, Fort Worth a couple of times. I did Alabama Shakespeare Festival. I went to the Folger. I did, you know, all these different theaters. And, you know, once you're invited someplace, there's a theater, a wonderful theater in Rochester, New York called Jiva Theater. And I think I did 8 plays with them. Pioneer Memorial Theater in Salt Lake City, Utah. I did, I don't know, 6 plays with them. You know, and so it's your, if you pull it off, if you succeed, you'll be invited back. And if you're good to work with, you know, if you have fun and don't, you know, cause problems that they don't need anyway. But, you know, I've been very, very lucky. I've made a living doing theater really for 30 years. I mean, alongside the teaching, and consider that, you know, to me, that's very successful. And nobody has any idea who I am. You know, I don't have a name. I don't have, you know, any of that stuff. It doesn't matter. I worked, I was in that rehearsal hall. You know, I had one year in which my schedule was so tight, I didn't even see the opening night of one play because I had to move to a different city to start rehearsals that night. Mm. Anyway.
So what draws you to a particular play or screenplay? What is there something, a theme or something that you're constantly drawn to, or something that makes you click with a piece?
Yeah. Two things, I think. If I laugh, if it's funny, if I really am laughing when I'm reading it, that's a damn good sign.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if I'm crying, that's even a better sign. Mm-hmm. You know, this play that I'm going to New York with is called Hong Kong, Mississippi. And it's a play about a Chinese kid who...
Now, is this something you wrote?
No. This is something I directed.
Okay.
Written by a Chinese American actor who flunked out of Cal Arts. I mean, went to Cal Arts and they kicked him out after his first year. One of their biggest mistakes, because the guy he's a wonderful writer, but he's also a terrific actor. His name is Wesley Du, D-U. Mm-hmm. And this is a story, it's based on his life. It's a story about him becoming, growing up in the Tenderloin of San Francisco, and with a Chinese single parent mother who runs a Chinese restaurant. And he is very attracted to blues music. And the only people that play blues music there during the time that he's 40 now, so this has been 25 years ago, were African Americans. Mm-hmm. And the play is about his coming to terms with the fact that he not only loved that music, but his surrogate father becomes the most important person in his life, who was a great jazz guitar player, Black jazz guitar player. And his mother is a total racist. You know, she doesn't want him playing Black people music.
So there's the conflict.
Yeah, and there lies the conflict. But in the play, it's a one-man play. He plays not only the kid, but his mother and all the Black characters, of which there are 5. Mm-hmm. And so part of the thing that attracted me to the piece was how dangerous it was. Because a Chinese boy, Wes is 40, but he looks 20, you know. Mm-hmm. But playing a heavyset Black man is a little bit scary. But also when I read it, I just was blown away by it. I think it's a very important play for today. And it's a play about race and mm-hmm. about what's really important. It's kind of a beautiful story, because the Cannonball, the Black character, the great player who really is a person, was as racist as the kid's mom. Couldn't stand Chinese. His kid was killed in Vietnam, and he hates Asians. So it's the coming of these two cultures coming together for the first time, and it breaks your heart. I mean, it just is incredible. And that's what attracted me to that. You know, it really, it's got to move me, or it's got to, I've got to feel like it's important to be said now, that there's a reason to say this. I have a relationship here with a theater called A Noise Within in LA, and I love them. They've offered me, I've done 5 plays with them, I think, but they've offered me plays. But if the play doesn't speak to me somehow, personally speak to me, then I just don't, it wouldn't be right for me to do it, because I wouldn't do it well.
Let's talk a little bit about Jean Genet, and because that was my first encounter with him, is when you assigned that scene from The Maids, where Matt Dittman and I played Solange and Claire. And so how did you learn about Jean Genet? And because I feel like there's an intense attraction to that.
Yeah. It's so funny. College, you know, I went to the University of Pennsylvania as an English major, and it's so informed. I was very underread, and learned very, very early that I better read everything I could get my hands on, you know, to keep up with all the other people that were there. Mm-hmm. And Genet was part of it. Genet and other writers, and also my love of theater happened there. There's a wonderful story. It's not about Genet, it's about Tennessee Williams, actually. Mm-hmm. That happened. I had an English teacher when I was at Penn by the name of Landon C. Burns. And Landon C. Burns was this really good looking guy. He was 30 years old, blonde, and a tennis player, and he taught literature. And everybody in the class was in love with this guy. He was a terrific teacher, and inspiring. And he assigned us to read The Glass Menagerie. And so we read The Glass Menagerie, but he told us this story about the fact that he was the first person ever to read The Glass Menagerie because he was staying in a YMCA in San Francisco. And there was a guy down the hall typing and typing and typing away. And one day he went down, the door was always open, and he introduced himself. And the guy at the typewriter said, "Hi, I'm Tommy Williams." It was Tennessee Williams. And the play that he was typing was The Glass Menagerie. So Landon Burns told us that he was the first person ever to read that play. Okay. So I thought he was bullshitting. I thought he was telling us so we'd get excited about the play. I never believed him. Right. So years later, I'm on Fire Island, and I get up very early on a Sunday morning to go get the New York Times at this little grocery store. And my God, sitting on the steps of the grocery store, oh my God, it's Tennessee Williams. He's sitting there in his hat, waiting for the store to open. And I go, oh my God, I know it's him. And I finally work up the courage, and I introduce myself to him. And I say, I'm a director in New York, et cetera, and doing my thing. And I said, I got to ask you a question. When I was in school at the University of Pennsylvania, we read The Glass Menagerie, and there was a teacher that said he was the first person ever to read it. And Williams looked up at me and said, "Oh, you mean Don Burns?" True story, right?
Wow.
So years later, I go back to the University of Pennsylvania to direct The Glass Menagerie at the Annenberg Center in Philadelphia, and with a great cast. And Rosemary Murphy played Amanda, which was amazing. But in the program, I wrote a program note telling this story, and I was staying in a little rooming house or whatever, and the phone rings in my room, and it's Landon Burns, who had seen the first preview. He's now 80 years old. So I go out to breakfast with him the next day. So that was the full circle of The Glass Menagerie. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. Did your conversation with Tennessee, did you talk about anything else besides that?
Yeah,
or
probably about, I don't think I had at that point ever directed a Tennessee Williams play, but I had read everything, and I knew, I knew a lot about him, and he was very, as I remember it, it's 30 years ago or 40 years ago, but I remember his not really being interested in talking about himself. He wanted to know about me. And I always found that, wow, what does that tell us about him? I mean, he really was not very forthcoming about talking about his own work, but let's talk about you. Anyway.
That's really amazing. That does say something. But I think, that's reminds me of you. You were always present and interested and engaged with all of us as students. And, I mean, that's what I love about you, is that you are always interested, and you really make us feel like we're at home with you, and I'm sure you've heard it, so many times, but it's you really created a special place for us. And I think one of the greatest things that you gave us often was confidence. Because how it is as an actor, it's scary. We feel insecure, and are we doing the right thing? Are we making the right choices, playing the right actions? And you you always made us feel safe and comfortable to explore and, you know, discover things in the moment. And your joy during rehearsals really gave us confidence. And it was amazing.
It came from when I went to Carnegie. They used to take the BFA ones, the freshmen, and put them in a big room. They're probably 40, 50, 60, I don't know how many. And they said, turn to your left, turn to your right. 2 of you won't be here next year. And that was the whole thing about Carnegie. It was very competitive. And some people cannot survive that, and they fold right away. And I kind of vowed to myself, I hated it. And I vowed to myself that I would never do that. And because I don't think you can ever do your best work. You do your best work when you feel good, when you feel you can fail, when you feel you're even encouraged to fail even better. And I think we learn from our failures far more than we learn from our successes, because our successes get caught up in ego and failures don't. You search for what the hell happened. You know?
Yeah, and that's exactly what you did, was you created a safe space to fail. And when we did fail, it was always funny. And you know, and I think you and Lou both created that space where if we failed, it was just funny. And then we move on, you know, pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and do it again. And that was the beautiful part about it, is even if we failed, it was just like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, like, just
no. I think sense of humor has a lot to do with it too. Because once, I mean, my relationship with students when I was at Cal Arts was I would say terrible things to students, and they'd say it right back to me, and I would just love it. You know? Like, when are you're in your 4th year, when are you going to learn how to act?
Right.
And then they turn right at me and say, well, when are you going to learn how to teach? And that was my relationship with students. It was always that way. It was self-deprecating humor on both sides.
Yeah. And it was fun, and it was beautiful, and it felt like we were family. And and I tell you that I didn't have that experience when I got my master's at UCLA in directing. It was a totally different experience, and it was like another world. It wasn't anything like what you and Lou created at Cal Arts. Was that sense of family and a safe place to fail and discover who we were as actors and directors, and that is so important. And I didn't really have that as much at UCLA. It was very like they were looking for products, you know, and but I think that what you and Lou created was really a place for where artists could thrive and find themselves. And it was really a wonderful. It's one of my most cherished memories, and I think about it a lot. So let's talk. I want to hear about the Maids a little bit. Like, where did you direct that, and how was that process?
Did an off-Broadway production in New York, and of course then at Cal Arts with you guys. What is it about that play? Well, first of all, it's based on a true story, and about a murder in France where these maids chopped their person that they were maids for.
Madame,
Madame, and chopped her up in little pieces and put her in the woods, buried her in the woods. And that's where the idea of the story came from originally by Genet. But Genet being always theater, you know, it's theatrical. It's got to be bigger than life. It's got to be, you know, one of my and I tried the play once with women because it's written for 3 women.
Yeah.
It's never really been successfully, as far as I'm concerned, done that way. It's much better with men. And the reason is because it's Genet and it's kinkier and it's something more astounding when three men are doing it. There's a wonderful conceit in the play too. The whole beginning of the play, there's a madam on stage and a maid, and they're bantering, talking 20 minutes, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And suddenly an alarm clock goes off. And it's one of the greatest moments ever. This alarm clock goes off and they go, oh shit, she's gonna be back. And they start stripping and putting the room back in order because they've been role playing that entire 20 minutes, you know? And of course, the audience doesn't see that coming or shouldn't. It's I don't know, it's a, my favorite writer, I think, if it is also French. Ionesco is my absolute favorite writer. Great writer, I'm talking about, you know, not, and there's a thing about French writers. They're unafraid. They talk in a different way than American writers. I don't know. Ionesco to me is one of the greatest writers. Well, I think he's my favorite writer, and I think he's one of the greatest writers. Certainly, you know, Shakespeare, Chekhov, Shaw, all those people. But then there's Ionesco. You know?
What is it about Ionesco that excites you?
Well, language. I'm a language guy. I love language. And Ionesco, you know, he all of his plays, but one in particular called The Lesson, which I've directed a few times. It's about a professor, and this little girl comes to have him teach her, and she's getting ready for her exams, very big, very important exam. And the lesson that he teaches her is gobbledygook. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's all about languages and these things, and it makes no sense at all. It's absolutely baloney. But it's screamingly funny. And she tries to buy into it for a while and then can't, and begins having a toothache, and the toothache gets really, really bad. And then he takes a knife and shoves it in her and disrobes his academic robe, revealing a swastika.
Wow.
And he wrote it in 1945. It's one of the scariest plays I've ever read. And it's screamingly funny until the end. And the end just leaves you, you know, I mean, it's about the Nazis killing the Jews one by one. And at the end of the play, his maid comes in and says, oh, there's another student here for you, sir. You know, she'll be dead in another 20 minutes.
Wow.
You know,
that's intense. I can imagine the first time you've been reading that must have been just shocking.
Yeah, just because you really, I mean, he's a great writer. And because he always has a sense of humor, wonderful sense of humor. The monologues in that play go on for like 3 and 4 and 5 minutes, and they make no sense at all. They're ridiculous. They're like a voice lesson. But at the same time, they're very funny. Anyway, I don't know how I got on to that.
Yeah, but humor, it's interesting because I remember you telling a story about how to play humor. And I don't recall what the play was. All I know, I feel like it was an Irish play, or you were in Ireland. I don't know. It had to do something like that, but it had to do about a detective that was questioning people. And you were talking about how he played it so serious, and the more serious he was, the funnier it was. Yeah. Do you remember the play that I'm talking about?
No, but there's an incredible story about Brendan Behan and the hostage, and the hostage is an Irish play. It takes place in Dublin, and it takes place in a brothel. All these whores and drag queens and people come in and out, and there's a kid that has been captured by the British, or no, the kid is British, I think, and it's been a long time. And there's a character that everybody, it's screamingly funny, and there's songs and people are playing the piano and they're carrying on. And there's one character, and it's the IRA man. The IRA man is the only person in the play that is serious.
Right.
And so Brendan Behan sends to America, to Strasbourg at Actors Studio, says, I need a method actor to come over here and act this because I don't trust the Irish. Send me an American actor. So Strasbourg sends him a serious actor who comes over there, goes into rehearsal, and they rehearse. And opening night, the guy gets so upset on stage, playing the IRA, that he walks down to the edge of the stage and he turns on the audience and he says, will you please stop laughing? This is not a comedy. And of course, the audience bursts into even more laughter.
Right.
And backstage, or the story is told that backstage, Behan comes to the guy's knocks on his dressing room door and says, that's the best fucking line I never wrote.
Yes, I remember that. That's it.
And it's in the play. If you get a copy of The Hostage, there's a footnote giving the actor credit for that line. How great is that?
That's amazing.
I know, totally amazing.
That's all coming back together now. Now I remember that story. Yeah, that was it. That best line I never fucking wrote. I remember that. Yeah. Oh man. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into film and television.
Well, I made my agent in New York wanted me to come out here because he thought I would really do well in television, and I was 50, I guess, years old, a little late to start. And I come out here, and for a year, I couldn't get arrested. I mean, I had this incredible resume, but it was all theater. There was never a film. I didn't even know how films were made. And I had gone to school with Steven Bochco, who more or less put his arm around me and got me an internship at Fox for a very, very coveted internship at Fox. And so I trailed directors for a year and found out how you make movies. Oh, they move walls. I didn't know that, all these other things. Right. At the same time, Chanticleer Films had a contest every year for people who had never done a feature, but were known in the business for being like, they directed commercials or they were theater directors, but they were surrounding that issue of the feature film. And it was a contest. And 1,000 people apply, and they end up with 30 finalists, and they make 5 films. And so I went through that contest. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do, but I got it. I got a film. And made a film called Traveler's Rest. And that was my introduction to the film world. And I had a big budget. I had a $250,000 budget, and I had great actors and who were more than kind to me because, it's like you're in the middle of it all and you go, how am I doing? And they say, you're all right, you're all right. I'll never forget Lois Nettleton is in this movie, and she's really a wonderful actress. And we're shooting a scene, it's late, and we did a take of it, and I went over to her afterward. I said, I was scared, and I said, Lois, I think you're playing the end of the scene right from the top. And she we barely knew each other. And she turned to me and she said, "How did you know that?" She said, "No, nobody would ever tell me that." And I thought, oh, here it comes. And then she hugged me and she said, "You're absolutely right." And later we had to talk about it. And she said, because no film director would do that. They don't know acting enough to do that. That isn't what they do. They shoot movies. So that was kind of a great moment for me and gave me tremendous confidence with actors.
Right.
On film sets. And then Bochco gave me a shot at Doogie Howser MD, and then I did a film for CBS, and then I did another television show about the theater for CBS, which was a pilot that I thought would take off and didn't. You know, and then I started acting. I did a little bit of acting. But I was never an actor. You know, I was just never.
How did that feel, by the way? I mean, because you started out acting, in junior high, right?
Yeah.
And had you acted since then, and then?
Well, I acted in college and I acted at Carnegie, and then when I got out of Carnegie and went to Seattle, I acted in 4 or 5 plays, and I was part of the Seattle Repertory Theater for a while.
Okay.
But never comfortable. Always, you know, throwing up opening night, and always nervous, and always never comfortable, never, you know, interesting.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think when I started out at Carnegie, everybody was so much better than I was. Do you know what I mean? They were more grounded, they were more secure, they were more confident, they were more everything.
Now, is it because Lou Palter, he was a little too honest, you think, and you didn't feel safe to fail?
No, I felt safe to fail. Lou knew. See, he knew. He knows still today, that son of a bitch. I mean, he knows when it's BS, and he knows when it's not.
Yeah.
And he will not tell you it's BS. He will tell you it's bullshit.
I know. I remember doing an emotional recall, and it was about I had an abusive stepfather, and I was doing this reenactment of the time he grabbed me and threw me against the wall, and the first part of it was genuine, and then I did something, I don't know what I did, but it wasn't. I ended up on the floor. That's all I remember. And then I remember that was basically the end of the emotional recall. And he says, was that for us? He was just like,
I can hear him.
Yeah. Was that for us?
The stories at Carnegie where you know, you'd be in a scene study class for him or something, and you have your scene partner, and the day that you had to perform it, you had to do it in class.
Right.
Inevitably, you would be outside the studio theater saying, "What the hell is our objective?" He's ask you what your objective is. Now, what is your objective?
Right.
Because we hadn't approached it at all that way.
Right.
You know, we had just learned the lines and went on stage. But no, Lou is, I mean, he still teaches in my workshop. We team teach the acting workshop. And he is as sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
What's so incredible and great about the two of us together is he will see things I would never see. And because he's primarily an actor, and I'm primarily a director, even though we've done both, but I see it through a director's eyes, and he sees it through an actor's eyes. So I'm always amazed that he'll say something and I'll go, why didn't I think of that? Well, because it's not in my bailiwick. It's his, you know? And always with a sense of humor. I mean, he's very, very nurturing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like there's a similarity in how you both function. There's a genuineness and honesty, but it's also it's all done with love and a sense of humor. Everything that you say and do, it's all about you're coming from a loving place. And I always felt that working with both of you.
Well, I'm kind of a product of his. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I kind of studied under him, at least the acting part of it. And so that all informed. I mean, you know, what happens to you is you have these teachers that either turn you on or off, and the ones that turn you on, you kind of emulate them or whatever. And that's what happened with Lou and I.
And I will say, when I was at UCLA directing, I really wanted to emulate you because of how you interacted with actors and showed so much joy and encouragement. And I was really, I think I definitely, you definitely had a very strong influence on how I interacted with actors, because that's what I felt, how you function with me, I felt made me a better actor. And that's what I wanted to bring out of the actors that I worked with as well, bring out that sense of comfort and being embraced in this loving, atmosphere. And I felt that you did that. And that's what I try to do too.
It's interesting because I think, I don't know what happened, but I wasn't always that way. I was way too uptight. But somehow in my late 20s, my shoulders dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped playing director
mm-hmm.
and playing teacher and started just being Craig.
Right.
And the minute that happened, not only did my work get better, but I had a hell of a better time doing what I'm doing.
And that was it. You were playing. And I remember the walk. You have this walk when you walk and you talk to an actor and you would offer a note, and then I'd watch your expression and you had so much joy in your face as you were coming back, and you'd look at us. I remember you'd look at us as you were coming back and you looked so fucking happy. It was just beautiful.
Wow.
I mean, that's what it was. You did everything with a sense of joy and love, and it just made us all better at what we were doing. And I think about Wilderness when we did that, and that was so intense. That was the first play that we had done first year, and it was the end of the year, and we did that, and it was intense doing all that. But you brought, I think you brought the best out of all of us in one form or another.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, I don't think I was easy, I've never been really easy in a way. I'm pretty strict, even professionally. Pretty. I like people who work.
Mm-hmm.
And I love people who fail in front of me, because if you fail in front of me, that means you really trust me. Do you know what I mean? It just means that you feel safe, and that's very important to me. It's interesting because, if you have a long run of a play and you go back and see it, and you sit there and it's not good. Some things have happened, and you go and meet with the actors because it's in your contract to do that. You have to go back every month and give notes. And the notes are, what play were you doing tonight? Wasn't the one I directed. But it's that awful thing that, you've been away from it for a month. Things do happen. And you're scared to go back and see it. I don't want to go back and see it, but I have to. It's in my contract.
Yeah.
And then how is that going to be taken by the actors? What are they going to resent it? Are they going to fight it? Are they going to, So it's a lot of it's choice of words and keeping anger at bay. keeping any sort of anger, any sense of anger, because anger is unproductive. It won't get you anywhere, at least from me, it won't.
That's a wonderful note for life in general.
Yeah, it's an enemy, anger.
Yeah. It clouds thinking, distorts it.
Yeah. And I get angry. I mean, I get angry in life. Yeah. Very angry at times. But it doesn't help. It's not an ally. It's a negative.
I apologize. I interrupted you when you were saying Lou knew. Now, what did he know in terms of your acting ability?
Well, he just knows. He knows when you're in it and when you're not. He knows when you're, acting is about pretending. And the people that pretend well are good actors. And the people that can't pretend will never be actors. And he just knows when you're being honest and when you're not, when you're BSing your way through something. And I wasn't that secure with myself when I was 20 years old either. Never mind having to even pretend I was, right? So I think you've got to be pretty damn secure with yourself. I think of some of the actors that came through Cal Arts that really before even in the BFA 1 year, or MFA 1 year, you go, oh, watch out for that one. Mm-hmm. That one's a pop above. Sarah Wilson, who you just interviewed, mm-hmm. She was exactly that.
Yeah.
Her BFA 1 scene, which was from Birdbath, I think she even mentioned it, mm-hmm. Was so astounding that we were standing there watching the end scenes because everybody's going to get graded on them and stuff. And this fellow teacher, Roger, punches me in the elbow and says, "Is she really that good?" And I said, "Yes, she is." Yeah, she was something else. She was just not, she had it before anybody ever trained her. It was something deep inside. And Lou talks about Ed Harris being that way. I'm sure that Sonny Valicente, I don't know if you know him but he was certainly that way. Mm-hmm. They're just, you can separate them out. Condola Rashad, who's now a big actress.
Don Cheadle.
Don Cheadle, probably. Yes, I wasn't there, but yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's and there every now and then you'll see somebody that just goes, or they'll do something, or they'll grow into it. They're at Cal Arts and suddenly by their third year, they're just flying. The training is dropping in, it's making sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really one of the greatest experiences of my life, working with both you and Lou. I keep saying it, but it's true. So what do you, when you think about your life from where you started and where you are now, what do you see as your through line? What do you see as the thing that where you started and where you've ended up, and the surprises that have come along the way?
Oh, it's interesting. I look back feeling very lucky, as I said. I've been lucky in many ways. One, that I happened to meet people that had huge influences on me by either what they said or what they did. my time at Hunter College, teaching, before Harold Clerman and Joe Anthony and Lillian Hellman told me to leave, was the most informative time of my life. I mean, that those three people would put me in a room and tell me to get out, that I needed to go and be part of the profession, that I shouldn't be teaching at college. I should be out of there. And that was the impetus for me to leave and start my own theater company. I mean, if they hadn't said that, I'd still be at Hunter College.
Well, I mean, just the fact that they just basically downloaded an enormous amount of self-confidence just from that. I mean, if you knew that you were going to have tenure, that must have been a very, very difficult decision. You're like, well, I have security if I stay here, but the risk is if I go out, what will happen?
Yeah. And go out with no net.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a financial net. I don't come from money parents or anything. It was really going out there and getting dirty.
Yeah.
And seeing if I could do it,
and you did it.
And we did it. We, a group of us together, we I don't know how we did it. I mean, looking back, I don't know how I did it. I mean, I cleaned a lot of bathrooms and I raised a lot of money. And I put together a board. John Lindsay, who was mayor of New York, was on my board. I mean, all these incredible people. And, the year that I stopped my theater company, because it was obvious, I did a retreat with my board. And at the retreat, I said, I just want to direct. I don't want to I'm spending 3/4 of my time raising money every year, and it's, of course, that's what you do when you're an artistic director at a theater. And that isn't what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do plays and be in rehearsal.
Yeah.
And that's the time that I put the theater to bed. I said, no, then I don't want to do this anymore. It's had its place. I did it for a decade. Now I want to go out and just direct plays. And did. But turning back, I can't remember how much, but it was a lot of money we sent back to National Endowment for the Arts because we're stopping the theater.
Right.
Anyway.
So when you look back and you think about it, like what was the change? What did you notice from where you started and where you ended up? You mentioned a little bit about relaxing and just being you. Like, was that what happened? You just became comfortable with your process?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think, growing up Roman Catholic and being gay in a world that, although the theater is very gay friendly, never quite letting go of that. In other words, always having that as being kind of a hang up. Pretty closeted, pretty quiet. And it really wasn't until, I don't know, maybe even as late as when I was 50. Not that I wasn't, I had partners and things, but I was never comfortable. And I think then there was another change, a bigger change. And I became comfortable with that and everything else. And I think my work got better then too, because I was more myself.
Yeah.
The history of that, when you think of, I was born in 1941 and grew up in the 50s and 60s, and where that the whole gay world has come now with gay marriage, with we just have yesterday the first gay cabinet member was nominated, Pete Buttigieg,
right.
Which is pretty amazing. I mean, in my lifetime that I would ever see that, no way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just forbidden territory. Anyway, and I think that struggle and how to play it in a way, both professionally and personally, was always a struggle until probably I was maybe 50.
What helped you identify with it and embrace it? What helped you with that?
It's interesting. Although I wasn't there, Stonewall.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened at Stonewall is there was a series of gay bars in New York, and the cops would come and they would want money, and they would, you know, they would cart people away and put them in jail overnight and beat them up sometimes. And it was 1969, and, you know, you push a people just so long, and then they're going to push back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. And somehow it was the start of a revolution, really. It was and I'm sure every minority has gone through this. Certainly, you can't, you push African Americans just so far, and they're going to push back. Baby, watch out. Mm-hmm. And I think that really said, whoa. You know, originally, you felt very alone. You felt you weren't part of the fabric of America at all. Mm-hmm. You were hiding. You know, it was pretty awful. But Stonewall suddenly, and then it didn't stop there. It began there, you know, and then, you know, I don't know, the whole gay thing, but the AIDS thing was really awful. Mm-hmm. Especially in the theater in New York, because I stopped buying Variety because every time I would buy it, I'd open it up and there would be 4 more people I knew who were gone. You know, it's kind of like, it's the virus that we're going through now, you know, on a much smaller scale, but it was in the theater community, in the dance community, in the arts community, it was huge. Mm-hmm. Anyway. But I'm pretty comfortable now.
Yeah, and you make everyone that you encounter comfortable, and that's why I love you. And it feels like being at home with you, and you welcome everybody with such wonderful hospitality. Let's talk a little bit about your current projects and the writing workshop, and how people can connect with you if they want to join.
About 20 years ago, I started the workshops. There was first an acting workshop and then a writing workshop. And I had no intention of starting it. I had students come to me from CalArts, acting students that said, you know, we're out now, we're doing commercials, we're doing all this stuff. We're trained to do great literature and better work, and we're not doing it. Will you teach, you know, a class? And I said, no, I'm teaching enough at CalArts. I don't want to do that. But what I will do is sit in on some acting classes and try to recommend some people. So I did, and was so horrified by what I saw out there in Hollywood, you know, that I said, all right, I'll do it. And that's how it began. Mm-hmm. The acting class is which is now, we're doing it on Zoom now, which is really crazy, but it worked. Mm-hmm. The writing class is very small. It's 8 to 10, no, never more than 10. Mm-hmm. 8 people. It's gotten very popular. So now I do it one Saturday mornings and one Sunday mornings. Mm-hmm. But it's everybody in there is working on something. They're working on Marvin Tunney, who was a great dancer with Alvin Ailey Dance Company, was in there for a long time writing his memoir about being, you know, the prime dancer at the Alvin Ailey Dance Company. That's what he was working on. Other people are working on plays, they're working on screenplays, they're working on memoirs, they're working on poetry. But it's all very different. And what we do in there is everybody brings work every week and exposes it. A lot of those people are actors, so we read a lot of work and then we talk about it. And basically how to make it better, or does it repeat in on itself, or are you giving it away too early? All of those things. My cousin is a great writer and has had a big influence on me, even though I don't even know him very well. It's Jules Pfeiffer. And Jules, I've directed his work, his plays, but he was a great cartoonist.
Yeah, you allowed me to, I think I was your AD on that experimental one he was doing at Cal Arts that one summer.
Oh, Jules Blues.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's right.
And I got to act in it a little bit.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And Lou acted in it too, actually. But he's a great writer, and he has had a huge influence on me as a writer, and therefore the lab. It's again, Brian, it's the same thing. It's a very safe forum. We have a lot of fun. The sessions run for 12 weeks. And then at the end, I pull in actors if it's acting related, and have the actors come in and read the work. And there's been a novel published out of there. There's been 8 plays published out of there now. It's 20 years, so it's a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's been really rewarding. And I love doing it. I love doing it because I watch the work get better and better and better and better and better, and that's kind of a thrill. And we just finished a session last Sunday, Saturday and Sunday, and everybody working on completely different things. The age range is huge. I mean, the youngest person is 17 and the oldest person is 78.
Wow.
And they're all from different backgrounds. You know, one is a retired gynecologist from Ireland. one is a brilliant actress who went to Carnegie, who had a huge television career and has turned to writing. Mm-hmm. Marvin Tunney, who was in there, a dancer. There's another faculty member from Cal Arts in there, a guy named Michael Smith, who's a designer.
Okay.
And it's very fun. You should join us.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. My wife is currently writing a screenplay, and she is a very talented writer. And she was an editor-in-chief of Atlas Obscura, and she's written for Playboy and Penthouse. And but she's working on a screenplay about her father's band. And so I'll talk to you offline about it, but this is something that I would like her to do, because I think it's the perfect space for her to experiment and work through this project with you. So, but yeah, I'll talk to you about that. But how can those that are watching and listening, how can they connect with you if they'd like? Now, is there does one have to submit like material in order to be admitted, or how does the process work?
Yeah, it's so weird now because it's all on Zoom. Usually it's coffee at Craig's house and bring your writing and we'll read it together.
Right.
You know, it's schmoozing time. Now that's all gone.
Yeah.
But yes, a sample of writing, and also usually an interview where, for both reasons, to see if it's the right mix and to see if our chemistry is anywhere. Do you know what I mean? Because if it isn't, it's a waste of money and time. Yeah. And so I usually, sometimes people audit before they come. They'll audit a class and then make a choice. But yes, a sample of writing and an interview, and usually, and now the interviews are here. They're on Zoom because they have to be.
So is there, because what I'm going to do, just so you're aware, I'd like to put a link or something for those that would like to connect with you. What is the best way to do that? Is there a website, or
there is a website. It's Craig Belknap's Writing and Acting Workshops, but the best way is to just send me an email. Okay. Which is cbelknap, my last name, at earthlink.net. That's the best way to get to me. Okay. It's cbelknap at earthlink.net.
Great. I'll put that on the show description so that it's easy to find as well.
Great.
And is there any other projects that you'd like to share with us that we may be able to see in the future?
No, I'm writing a memoir. I have a film script that almost got done 3 times.
Is that Cooking in Hell's Kitchen?
Yeah, it's Cooking in Hell's Kitchen. And I'm revising it to make it more doable. And what I mean by that is less scenes where it's raining, less.
Is rain an issue?
Fewer people, less building of burning buildings and things like that.
Okay.
But I'm working on a memoir. I'm working on how it all happened, which I may or may not get done. The most important thing I'm doing is I'm learning Italian, which is a bitch. It's not easy, this language. Anyway, but I'm learning Italian.
Now let's talk about that briefly before we disconnect. What I want to know, because I know you have a long history with Italy. How did that begin, and your love affair with Italy?
Okay. First of all, when I had my theater in New York, I lost my space. And when you lose your space, in the old days in the theater in New York, you lose everything. You lose your space is who you are. And I thought, we're in our 4th year and I don't have a place. And we had just gotten on the map, and we had an identity and all that good stuff. And Mel Gusso in the New York Times wrote an article about it. What a shame, this company, et cetera, et cetera. And Ellen Stewart, who was the head of La Mama in New York, a big theater complex, called me up and said, I want to see you. I would like to talk to you. So I went down and had tea with her. And at the end of our time together, Ellen she's an incredibly gifted theater woman, won a MacArthur Genius Grant. I mean, she was an unbelievable theater person. At the end of the meeting, she said, I want you to bring your theater here for next year. And I'm not going to charge you anything. I just want you to be in residence here. And I welled up. I welled up. I had tears in my eyes. And she turned to me and she said, and that's why. Anyway, we went there for a year. Then
I'm sorry, where was that?
In New York City.
Okay.
Now, here's the Italy thing.
Okay.
I've been teaching my labs for a long time, and I wanted to do a retreat. And Ellen Stewart, when she won the MacArthur Grant, which is $1 million or whatever it was, bought a monastery in Umbria, Italy.
Okay.
It's an arts colony. And I took both my labs and we went there for 2 weeks. This is about 4 years ago, and worked on writers and actors together, 26 of us living there and eating the best food I've ever eaten in my life.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, I've always been in love with Italy, but that experience just was one of the best things that ever happened. And now I'm going back to La Mama. Ellen is gone. She died a few years ago, but I'm going back to La Mama in New York with Wesley's play, with Hong Kong, Mississippi. So it comes full circle again. I've always been, I don't know, I'm very attracted to Italian people. I love Italian food. I married an Italian.
Now, how did you meet Roberto?
Oh boy. It's kind of a great story. He was teaching I was on a tour of Ireland, England, Wales, Scotland. And he was teaching at Trinity College in Dublin. He has a PhD in philosophy. And he was teaching there, and I went to a lecture. And at the end of that time, sparks flew. And we were together in Dublin for a couple of days. And then I said to him, if you come to LA and visit me, I'll go to wherever you're teaching next year and visit you. So he came to LA for 2 weeks, invited me home to his parents in Bologna for Christmas. And then we decided we wanted to be together. How were we going to do that? Either I was going to move to Italy, or we would get married, and it was the only way he could stay here to become a citizen. So that's what we've done. And he's on the road to citizenship now.
And when was your wedding?
It was in 3 years ago, June, in the garden, in the backyard.
Ah, that's beautiful. Congratulations. That's that is a beautiful place for a wedding. That's I'm so happy it happened there. That's perfect.
Yeah, and it's all you know, it's I don't think I've ever really been in love before. I just
what?
It's a magic time. I mean, it's a magic thing. And he's pretty incredible. I mean, he's extremely smart, much more well-read than I will ever be. Is teaching Italian, but is also, you know, writing all the time and having things published back in Italy. And he's doing a huge project on John Muir now, the guy that started the national parks in America. So it's all good. I want you to meet him.
I would love to. Before we disconnect, let's can you say your email one more time if somebody wants to would like to apply and for your writing workshop?
Sure. It's C as in Charles, Belknap, my last name, which is BELKNAP as in Peter, at earthlink.net.
Great. Thank you so much, Craig. I deeply appreciate you being here with me, and it brings back so many wonderful memories, and I love you very, very, very much. And I thank you for everything that you've done for me and the joy that you brought to my acting process when I was doing it, and your friendship as well. And I'm so thrilled how happy you are, and that you're married and you have a wonderful life. And it really, it's beautiful. Thank you.
And Brian, I love you too, and back at you. I'm just really proud to know you. And with everything you've been through too, that you just, that spirit you have of never giving in, never giving up, you know, climbing mountains. I love it.
Thank you. I try. It's it's an odd journey, and some, you know, I'll tell you what, if you finish your memoir, or when you finish it, let's do this again, because I'd like to read it and then talk to you more.
Okay.
do a second interview, because I would love to explore that. And
That'd be great.
all right. Well, I wish you and Roberto a very happy, healthy, and peaceful holiday season. And once again, I love you, my dear friend. And now we're going to have a really awkward ending, because I have to do this. Sometimes it doesn't always stop when I want it to. So, all right, here it goes.
Happy holidays, Guy.
You,
Love
you
you.
as well. Thank you.